Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Workpuls Productivity Talks. My name is Buena. I will be your host, and today I'm here with Bill Grundfest, who is the founder of the iconic New York City Comedy Cellar, as well as the Golden Globe win producer. Ah, I messed that one up.
Yeah, mess up the important stuff. Here, let me try it for you. The Golden Globe winning writer producer of many television projects over the last many decades, which involved using productivity and innovation tips in leading rather unproductive groups of humans who are extremely innovative but not that productive unless you can corral and channel their inner angels.
Okay, let's start off with the basics. How would you define productivity? What would you say that productivity actually is?
Well, productivity, I think, is rather objectively described as the amount that you produce in relationship to the amount of time in which it's produced. So time is really a crucial denominator in this. And in terms of what you produce, well, that's an interesting question. And I think a lot of people, maybe that's the first step, is to be clear about what your goal is, to be clear about what it is you want to produce, and have a clear vision in your mind as the leader of other human beings. If you can imagine what your preferred outcome is, you'll increase the likelihood of getting there.
Okay, and do you think that it can be measured? Now, obviously, it depends on what exactly it is that you're doing, but in general, generally speaking, can productivity be measured and how it can be measured?
Well, in my world of comedy and television comedy, it can be measured. And I support the idea of measuring it and giving your team an objective metric so that they know, are we getting closer? Are we getting further? Are we going in the right direction? So for instance, when you're running a television series, there are a certain number of scripts that need to be written, a certain number of episodes that need to be produced based on those scripts. So if you don't have a script that's ready by the time the actors are on the stage and the cameras that have been rented and everything is ticking, tick, 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 and it's expensive, then you're not being as productive as you could be. So in television series, you can measure it in terms of number of scripts that you've written, number of episodes you've produced. To the extent that you can do that, that's heartily recommended. In the comedy club business, you've got shows to put on. And let's say each comic in a show, at the Comedy Cellar, it's a showcase format, which means everybody does about the same amount of time. There's no headliner that does an hour preceded by a middle act that does 20 minutes and an MC that does 10. Everybody does, let's say, 15 minutes. So whether you're Dave Chappelle or you're someone we've never heard of, everybody is supposed to do, let's say, 15 minutes in the show. So you can measure productivity that way also. You can also measure productivity in comedy. It's extremely objective. People say comedy is subjective, in the eye of the beholder. No. Humor is subjective. Comedy can actually be measured in decibels. If the audience is laughing, you can measure the decibels, the volume of those laughs. You can measure the time in which that laugh occurs, and you do. You don't need to do it with a machine. When you're in the comedy business, you know, oh, that was a big laugh, that was a small laugh, that was a pity laugh, that was a laugh that was undeserved, the material didn't deserve it, but he sold it really well. And you learn to listen through all of that for your productivity metrics. And then having those, so you know, okay, so if there's a comic, for instance, who did great, but it's the wrong kind of material for the audience that you're curating, because you're curating two things at the same time. You're curating your product and you're curating your customer. Then that's a comic that you don't book again, because they might be great in a different context, but not in terms of your room. So to the extent that you can make productivity clear, even in something as allegedly mushy and subjective as comedy, even that can be made really quite specific.
Okay, well, it's interesting. It's to hear your point of view, because we haven't had a chance to talk with people from your industry, from the entertainment industry. It's usually we have people from marketing backgrounds and things like that. So it's really interesting to hear how the other people are doing it, how other industries are doing it, and we're trying
Other people,
to cover.
people in show business are the other people. So there's the
No,
normal people, and then there's the other people, the crazy people that we leave in the backyard because there's a virus, and let's leave them out in the backyard with the livestock. I'm not saying that that's what's happening to me. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that I've got two teenagers at home and one has commandeered my office for the online schooling and the other's in the living room with his online schooling and my wife's in the bedroom suite and the garage is full of laundry and I'm out here with the chicken because I have 7 animals. And so why not put Dad for the big productivity call? Put him out in the back with the chickens. Why don't you? Seems right. I'm sorry, you were saying.
I was saying that it's just interesting to hear. I didn't mean like other people, these other people. I meant like people from different industries, from
Yes.
all over the place, who everybody has something different, but at the same time, there are a lot of commonalities that are just applied a bit differently throughout the industries. But you shared with me some really, really cool tips that are not necessarily related to the way we work, but the way we behave towards other people that are working with us. So can we discuss that a bit?
No. No, I mean, yes. I mean, yes, absolutely. Of course. That's why we're here, right? And by the way, these tips that you have framed as not necessarily being productivity tips, with all deference, I say these are the heart of productivity. That without if you do these things, I will give you specific bullet points, right? You have my specific bullet points, right?
Yeah.
If you simply do these things, a lot of other problems just will never happen. You won't have to solve things because they won't occur. So they're really at the heart of the productivity issue, because when you're dealing with productivity, you're dealing with human beings. And human beings, while not easy, are really simple. They're not complex. So go ahead, ask your questions, and I will show you how these allegedly mushy non-productivity issues are actually at the heart and soul of it, no matter what you said.
Yeah, what I didn't mean like that way. I meant it more like technical productivity tips, I guess, like time management tips and things like that. So yeah, you shared the bullet points. Would be the first one on your list is kindness, actually radical kindness.
Radical kindness, yes. I fear that most organizations, whether it's a macro level large company or a small business, such as the Comedy Cellar would be considered a small business, or down to the level of family, do not run on the engine of kindness. They run on other systems. Sometimes the system is fear. People are afraid of losing their jobs. Not the most productive way to get productivity and innovation from a human being. Fear will make them show up on time. It'll make them clock in and out on time. It will not capture their hearts and minds. They won't be thinking about the solution that you need for your business while they're in the shower, which, by the way, I often, as a productivity tip, I suggest people go take a shower, because that's where many, many good ideas are found. I don't know why, they're always in there. But whether it's a business, whether it's a school, whether it's a family, whether it's a large or small business, driving by radical kindness will get you better results than an attitude of, well, I'm paying them, they're supposed to. If your reaction to the idea, and I'll get into what the application of radical kindness, because there are a lot of thought leaders, and I'm sure my wife would be very amused to hear me say the words thought leader in regards to anything approaching me, because I'm out here with the chicken. Thought leadership is one thing. Action leadership is a different thing. So I'm going to be very specific about what I've done and what you might be able to take from that. So for instance, in the comedy business, in the stand-up comedy business, this is the most cutthroat, competitive business going. And when I started the Comedy Cellar, it was built on a DNA of radical kindness, the exact opposite of what every other comedy club in the city, in the world, was working on at that time. I started life as a stand-up comic, in my early 20s. And the experience there was one of utter disrespect and utter lack of kindness. You'd go to a comedy club and they would treat you as if they're doing you a favor by giving you stage time, which you need in order to develop as a comic. And then you'd be able to order on the menu, you'd get one drink ticket, and you'd be able to order on the menu something on the lower left-hand 1/64th of the menu there. And show up at, midnight, and then try to get on by 2 o'clock in the morning. That was a New York comedian's life. When I started the Comedy Cellar, I took the exact opposite approach. I said, look, we can't pay you what you're worth, but we can pay you more than the uptown clubs are paying you. And when you come, whether you're working or you're not, come, drink what you want, eat what you want, hang out. In fact, and right there, just that blew people's minds. Now, even if I was not a devotee of radical kindness, even though I was going to be cynical, what did that do to the quality of my product? It rose instantly. Now the best comics in town wanted to be in that place where, hey, you can drink and eat and everything you want for free. And then we created a little space in the back of the upstairs restaurant called the Comedian's Table. And I'll talk about how we created that and why, but it became a clubhouse. So we were giving them a social circle. We were asking ourselves, what does our team need? And these people in this case were solo practitioners, lone wolves, spend all day by themselves, work by themselves. It's a very solo kind of life. We created a place where a family, a de facto family, could occur. We told them, I told them, look, you don't have to do your A material every time, because how are you going to grow if all you do is your absolute best 20 minutes? So we believe in you. It's okay to fail a little, not all the time, every time. We don't believe in you that much because we have a business to run. The people have come to see a show. They're expecting a certain quality, but they haven't come to see a big concert starring a big star. Granted, we have big stars, but they didn't come to see them. They came to see the brand, the Comedy Cellar brand, and who we've curated for that show. So we make it safe for people to try, to fail. There's no criticism. It's a no criticism zone. And if you do just those things that I've just now said, stop criticizing, don't run on fear, ask yourself, what do the humans in your team want? And typically it boils down to things like being heard, respect, acknowledgement. That stuff will retain your good employees longer than a paycheck. And that's not my opinion. All the data shows that the reason people stay or leave has a lot to do with their relationship with who they report to, their relationship with their colleagues. So if your attitude in productivity is, well, I'm paying them, so they better, well, good luck competing, because who your competition is might have seen this Zoom call and said, we're going to try that. Their people are going to stay longer. You're not going to have to recruit new ones. You're not going to have to retrain people. You're going to get people who want to succeed, who want to be productive, who want to be innovative. And they're going to be thinking about it when they're in the shower and when they're going to sleep and when they dream, and they're going to wake up with the solution to the problem that you want them to have. But you can't demand it. You have to allow it.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, based on my personal experience, like I would definitely agree with that. Even just a little bit of kindness goes a very long way. A very long way. It's not just like that in the entertainment industry. It's like that everywhere in our everyday lives, in everyday relationships that we have with people around us. So
Yes.
I can.
And yet, how many of us go not even out of our way, but how many of us have the consciousness that when somebody does something, you not only say thank you with those two words, but maybe a sentence or a paragraph on what it is you notice about what they did and what it is you appreciate about what they did. And in terms of that kind of positivity, positive reinforcement versus negative reinforcement of fear and obligation, I'm paying you and you'll lose your job if you don't, that thing. The way you shape behavior, I was a psychology major, so I'm an expert at these things. The way you shape behavior of humans or of rats or of pigeons, it doesn't matter. The way you shape behavior for long-term impact, not for short-term, not for getting to jump through a hoop now, but for long-term impact, the way you shape behavior, the way you get productivity and innovation is to praise and positively reinforce those aspects of what the person has done that you want more of. Praise what you want more of, and then give no energy on the stuff that you have a tremendous urge to criticize. It's not a perfect system. You're not going to be able to do it 100% of the time, but lean towards that, and you'll shape a person's behavior so that the stuff that you want, the behavior you want them to exhibit, that you want, will occur more of the time, and the negative stuff will occur less of the time. And eventually the good will crowd out the bad.
Okay, so sounds good actually. You mentioned a couple of things that I'm just looking at the bullet point list. So yeah, you mentioned eliminating criticism. You mentioned acknowledging and explicitly thanking people for their work. Also, yeah, making it safe to fail or redefining failure. What do you mean exactly by redefining failure?
My father used to say before he died, because after he died, he was clammed up.
Didn't talk much.
Didn't talk much, had nothing to say. My father used to say that the difference between a great idea and a stupid idea is often 1 millimeter. And that has stayed with me for a long time, because many of my ideas and the ideas that I am around, many of them start out as demonstrably stupid. I mean, ridiculous. Because I'm in a business where people stare at a blank screen and out of nothing create something. I don't know who does. I mean, the actors don't do that. The actors interpret what you've written. The directors interpret what you've written. They don't start from zero. You've given them a whole blueprint. Of course, then you have to argue with them about why the way you want them to do it is different. But then sometimes if you just shut up and let them do what they do, it comes out even better than what you wrote. And then the trick is just shut up and take credit, even though you don't deserve credit. Which, by the way, credit is another thing that my dad used to say. He used to say, it's amazing what a team can accomplish if you don't care who gets the credit. So to the extent that you can shift credit to others, they know what you're doing, and you will get their hearts and minds even more in support of you. You know, the bird needs the wind beneath the wings, and that's your team. So now I've gone off the rails. The question was,
how would you define redefining failure?
Yeah,
failure. What exactly do you think?
Yeah, you know, you can be objective and say, well, we needed a script by Monday morning's table read. If we don't have that, we have failed. So yeah, and I would agree with that. There's no excuse for that. But on the way there, when you're in the creative meetings, if you can redefine failure, it has to do with lack of criticism. So if you welcome all ideas, and if you don't swat down ideas, but you look for, oh, what is good about that idea? And focus on that. And sometimes what I used to do is play dumbest idea in the room, and I would go first. And I, as the leader of the team, would pitch an idea that was the dumbest idea so that nobody else would have to feel bad that their idea was going to be the worst idea of the meeting. I already put a flag in that. I got the dumbest idea. Okay, who wants to go next? So I think that failure is felt by humans in terms of criticism. As long as you don't run on critique and criticism and diminishing people, then it's going to be very hard for failure to be felt. And success will be more likely, not guaranteed, but more likely. So I think that the question of redefining failure comes down to eliminating criticism to the extent possible.
Makes sense. Yeah, makes sense. It seems that somehow we as humans are always more hit with the criticism than we feel good when somebody gives us a praise of something. We're gonna remember that criticism more, and we're gonna feel like a failure longer than we did feel good when that person told us that we did a good job. It's just something that hits us harder, I guess.
Yeah, there's a reason for that. There's a psychological reason, and there's an evolutionary reason. If you'd like, I'll be happy to share my views on that as well.
Yeah, please do.
Oh, okay. You see, I'm married 21 years, so I always ask permission to express an opinion. So I'm out here with the evolutionary reason is that back in caveman days, being right was a question of surviving, being right about where's that noise coming from. Is it a bear or is it a rabbit? So being right was a matter of survival. And I think that's hardwired into us evolutionarily. So even though the stakes now in being right are not survival, it's still, it amplifies that flight or fight response. It amplifies that survival mechanism so that we internally overreact. Oh, that feels terrible, compared to the rather small stakes that are involved. So there's the evolutionary reason. There's also a psychic reason, which is a lot of people have a little voice in their head that says, you are not enough. They've been told this since they're kids. Teachers, parents, media just surrounds everybody with the idea, you are not enough. So whenever somebody is told rather explicitly, you are not enough, you're not good enough, you're not, it really pounds that button. It really presses that button, and you shut that person down for a long time. And thirdly, behaviorally, psychologically, if you, they've shown that if you say one negative thing to a person, you have to say 20 positive things to undo the impact of that one negative statement. So if you want to be productive, be as productive as a leader as possible, and you don't want to have to make 20 statements to somebody, just avoid making the one negative statement. You'll save yourself 20 statements. So that's 3 reasons why. Stop with the criticism, oh, for God's sakes.
It's a good explanation. I'm just checking to see what else do we have in this list. Okay, eliminating criticism, watching and acknowledging, and occasionally showing interest in people as human beings, not just employees.
Yeah, that's a good one too. It helps if you actually mean it. It helps because people can kind of tell the authenticity of the interest. But even if you don't actually care about these people that are on your team and who are making your life successful or not successful, even if you don't care, faking it shows at least you're putting in the effort, and at least that will be appreciated. So if you ask people, hey, how was that ball game, or what did you do, or how are the kids, or what's going on with your dog, or whatever, it will make them feel human, which is all the productivity tips and the time management skills only work if people want them to work. They have to want to employ these various techniques and time management tips. If they don't actually want it to work, it's not going to work. It'll work for a week. It's like a diet. Yeah, it's 3 days, and then you're back to ice cream. So asking people, being interested in your team, A, will increase their productivity. B, it'll give you an insight into how to shape the way you approach them. Oh, this person is motivated by X, Y, or Z. This person is negatively affected by X, Y, and Z. So the next time you have an interaction with them, you can shape it for that audience. And I say that audience because, again, in show business, you're all about the audience. Some people are such great artists that they don't have to care about the audience. They do their art, and the audience, and it's so great, it happens to be universally, wonderful. For those of us mortals who are not absolute geniuses, I really recommend being audience-centric. And that means putting your customer first, what their needs are, asking yourself, what would make this experience the absolute best? and then delivering that value. And sometimes your audience is a person that you're meeting with, a superior, a colleague, somebody who reports to you. And asking yourself, now they're your audience. So before you go into that meeting, into that conversation, ask yourself, what's my goal? What do I want? How do I define success? Is it to get them to agree to what I want them to do? Is it to get them to come up with a solution on their own? What is the goal? And then understanding what your audience, that person, wants, and see if you can frame your conversation so that it's designed to give them what they want. So if they want, if they're people who want a lot of acknowledgement, then make sure, which many people do, make sure that you check in with them in the conversation. Okay, Dave, so what you're saying is, if I hear you correctly, you're saying you'd like us to solve X, Y, and Z. Is that right? Yeah, that's right. Okay, so now the person knows they've been heard, and at least there's commonality there. Simply being heard is tremendously productive.
It kind of rolls back to being kind.
It all rolls back to being kind. All of this, if all I could say to people was radical kindness, right? And then they would know how that radiates out, because people look at business leaders, family leaders, government leaders, they look at a wheel, and there's a hub of the wheel, and there are all these spokes that come out of the hub of the wheel, and they treat the spokes as discrete issues, discrete problems, discrete silos. Oy, don't get me started about silos. There's no silos, people. There's no silos. The boat floats or the boat sinks. There's no silos. Okay, certain companies that I'm not going to mention, one particular, Cupertino perhaps, does silos. So if you're as good as Apple, go ahead. You know, it's kind of like, well, Jon Stewart and Dave Chappelle function in a certain way. They don't necessarily think about the audience. They're not necessarily audience-centric. Yeah, sure. If you're Jon Stewart and Dave Chappelle, go ahead and do whatever you want. But if you're slightly short of immortal, try this. No silos. Everybody can talk to everybody. The spokes that come out of the hub of the wheel are often treated as discrete problems. But they're not. They're all emanations of the hub. So it all boils down. It doesn't just roll back to. It all emanates from the idea of radical kindness. And if you change what's going on in the hub, then all the spokes will appear differently.
Perfect. That's a perfect analogy.
I'm getting a little misty now. I'm getting a little teary, getting a little verklempt.
I love that. Do you have any other tips to share besides these that we already talked about?
Overpay your people. Overpay them. It is the cheapest ROI you will ever get. You don't have to overpay them. Listen, when I started the Comedy Cellar on the weekends, the uptown clubs were paying comics, and by comics, this is, those are the pre-Star. This is the early 1980s, 1981, 82, 83. Jerry Seinfeld and Chris Rock and Jon Stewart and Ray Romano. Those guys were getting $25 a set for a 20-minute set at the uptown clubs. I gave them $35. And I said to them, look, you guys are $1 million show. I can't afford to pay you what you're actually worth to do 20 minutes, but I can pay you more than the other guys are paying you. What does that do? It's more than I absolutely had to pay. But what did it do? it immediately showed respect, acknowledgement, affection. Because I had great affection for these guys and still do. It's a tremendous, creative, smart, verbal group of human beings who are so damaged. Oh my God. And I come from them. And I love them all. And that shows in the DNA of the Comedy Cellar, which is now 39 years old and has 4 locations. We started in one basement. So the way you do that is overpay people. They will come to you. They will stay with you for years. Our relationships with these very talented people who are stars and who could go anywhere, our relationships are decades old because right from the beginning, we supported them in every possible way that we could because we wanted to. Turns out that's good business too. So overpaying your people, it will avoid churn. You know how much that costs to lose somebody who knows what they're doing and then have to find somebody, and the amount of time before you find somebody, the lost productivity in that amount of time, the lost productivity before you get that new person trained and up to the same level, if that's possible, of the great person that you lost. How much productivity are you losing there? I think you're losing a lot more than overpaying your team boils down to. So, yeah, that would be my last thing. Radical kindness demands overpaying people, not only because you're some good human being, it's the cheapest ROI out there.
Okay, sounds like a good set of tips. I'd like to thank you really for taking the time from your backyard to talk to me today. It was lovely meeting you and lovely talking to you, and I hope all the viewers enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching.